Hi, how are you doing today? Why don't you have a seat right here and just tell us your name and about your project. Thanks for having me. My name is Albert Mitchelson and my project was proving the existence of ether. So I know you mentioned the ether, but what exactly were you trying to do? So what we actually had to do is we had to figure out a way to measure the ether. Otherwise, we had to create an experiment that could measure or detect the ether. So I know you mentioned an experiment. Where exactly did this experiment occur? So we actually built this apparatus to measure the ether in the basement of Western Reserve University. Well, that's weird that they had you working in a basement when they had all of the campus that you could have been working on. But what other significant events were happening at this time? So this experiment actually occurred in 1887. So about 2 years after 1887, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, and Washington, I believe, were all being recognized as states. And I believe this is the same time that America first sent ships to Pearl Harbor. So touching back a little bit on your experiment, this seems a lot for one person. Did you have anyone else working with you on this project at the time? This project would have been very difficult to do by myself. Actually, I had a colleague of mine by the name of Edward Morley work on this project with me. And it's actually the reason why we named the experiment the Mitchelson-Morley experiment. And while we're on the topic of big names at the time, Albert Einstein. See, this experiment that we did actually went on to help some of the theories of relativity that Albert Einstein had at the time. Well, I'm glad you had someone to work with on that project. That would have been very difficult by yourself. But what specifically was your role in the project? So for me, personally, I was tasked with designing a device that could detect the ether. And I ended up building this device that we later would call the informeter. Well, that's interesting. So what exactly does this device do? So the easiest way I can kind of explain it is we had 2 mirrors, a light source, and a telescope. So what we did is we shot this light at one of the mirrors, and it would bounce off the first mirror onto the second and into this telescope. And so what we were doing, the goal was to measure the different speeds of the light when it was going in the different directions. And if we could find a difference in the speeds of light as they were bouncing off these mirrors, then that could maybe prove the existence of an ether wind that would be pushing on this light and slowing it down or speeding it up. So ultimately, we were just trying to find out if the speed of light was changing. But unfortunately, our experiment actually proved that the speed of light never changed. And it's actually now why we consider light to be always at a constant speed. Well, that's very interesting. But what impact would you say that this had on the physics community? So I would say the biggest impact that this experiment had on the physics community would be that we ultimately disproved that the ether exists. This also helped prove that light always travels at a constant speed, and it also helped prove a couple of Einstein's theories of relativity. Well, all right, we just have one more question for you. Were you disappointed when you found out that the ether does actually not exist?
Yeah.
Well, at first I was disappointed that we could not prove that the ether actually existed, but really it had just as much of a positive impact on the physics community as us proving that it didn't exist as it did not proving that it did exist. Also, this ultimately led to me becoming the first American to win a Nobel Prize in physics.
Well, all right, that's all the questions that we have for you today. Thanks for coming in. Okay, well, thanks for having me.